Yep, hold on a sec. There we go.
Hey, there she is.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
How's the weather there?
Cold and raining.
What's cold?
About 45.
Okay, I'm about
You?
20.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
But again, you have humidity there, and that makes a world of difference.
We do in the fall. Right now we have no humidity, but I mean Raleigh, it's temperate.
Okay, because you're inland a little bit.
Yeah, I'm inland.
Okay, okay. So we are going to
Mhm.
learn your story, talk about what your life is about. I have some questions that, I think the average person
Mhm.
doesn't just think about,
Mhm.
you know, and you can probably relate to this, you know, before my accident, I didn't think of myself harsh towards adaptive individuals or anything. I just lived my life and wasn't around a lot. So the questions never came up. Kind of
Agreed.
ignorant in that aspect. I just didn't know.
Same. I
Not
didn't
good,
I didn't
not
know
bad.
much about spinal cord injury before my accident either. I knew one person in a wheelchair.
Yeah. And unless you're living with that person, you really don't know,
It's very
right?
true. Mhm.
Okay, and then we'll talk about insurance companies, the joys, and um, what all you're doing and what you've seen. So
Absolutely.
let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. Well, I broke my neck when I was 27 in a shallow water diving accident at my home in the Bahamas. I was at a little tiki hut bar about an eighth of a mile off the beach, and I took a shallow water dive and hit my head, leaving me a C6 quadriplegic. The challenge at the time was that it was a very out island where I grew up. And so I had to, along with a friend, direct my own medical care, and it took us multiple jets and 23 hours to get from the Bahamas over to Miami to be operated on. So I was in a challenging situation where I was circling the drain and I was running out of dopamine, which regulates your blood pressure. So when you break your neck, as you know, you have about 24 hours of adrenaline that kicks in. And so we ran into walls of thunderstorms and jets wouldn't come pick us up. But I made it. I survived. And they rushed me into surgery and it a spinal fusion. And I woke up and I had a surgeon come to me and he said, I have some really, horrible news and tragic news that you're paralyzed. And, excuse my French, but I said, no, no kidding. And fortunately, I'd been on a lot of wilderness survival trips throughout my entire youth, backpacking in Australia and New Zealand and around the world. So I was trained in medic first aid. So when I took the shallow water dive in the Bahamas, I was acutely aware that I was likely a quadriplegic, considering I couldn't move my limbs, and I was very fortunate not to have drowned. So I held my breath until somebody came to save me. So fast forward, I was in the ICU, and I have an extremely loving family. And in the hospital, they managed to kill me a couple times. And from that moment on, my family never left me alone, which I was incredibly grateful for. And my dad said to me, he said, "Listen, kid, you broke your neck and your body, but your brain is fine. So get to work, suck it up, and start rehab."
And exactly, life is not easy.
No.
Before your accident, you had ups and downs, schooling, everything and stuff. Yes, now, yeah, it's a different level of challenges,
It is. It
But
is. I was fortunate to be raised in an environment where I spent much of my time in boarding school around the world. So I did a lot of traveling. And I spent much of my time in China just seeing the trials and tribulations of just the average person, not disabled, and what they went through. And I went through a stint in jail in China because of an Italian boyfriend. And so I got to see firsthand how terrible life can be not paralyzed. So I was really fortunate that when I did become paralyzed, that having such an incredible support system around me, which I appreciate, a lot of people don't have that. And I definitely wouldn't have survived, or I would not be where I am today without them.
yeah, that in itself, support systems are critical to anyone with challenges. And, right now with everything going on with COVID, I've started doing Zoom calls just for amputees and stuff, chit chat.
You have to. I mean, you have to adapt, right? A lot of with COVID-19, for months and months, I was seeing all these articles about people living in social isolation and the mental challenges they were undergoing. And, I wasn't laughing at them, but I was just giggling to myself, thinking so many of us in the disabled world, because, we'll get to it later with insurance, we literally live in social isolation a lot of the time because we don't have the support system or the equipment what we need to survive and get out like an able-bodied person does all the time, especially quadriplegics.
Oh, very much so. And, I've taught, I want to say we're both very big advocates on the
Yeah.
adaptive side of things and talk to many people. And, you know, so with me, I'm just a couple of fingers missing. And a lot of times the insurance companies, they think it's no big deal. Um, I know a lady that was trying to get a prosthetic finger, and the insurance company denied it, saying it was a cosmetic item.
Yeah. I was just on a call yesterday with a wonderful woman named Nicole Van Uren, and she has Forest Stump, the nonprofit. And we had a lovely conversation, and we brought up just that issue, whether it's prosthetic or a wheelchair, whatever it may be, because of certain language in an insurance policy. I mean, they're creating our disability. We're not, she made a really interesting point. She said, we're not disabled per se. It's just the insurance companies are causing us to act disabled.
That's a very true statement. I love Nicole. We've talked a few times and stuff. I'm a big advocate for everything she's doing, you're doing. And, that's why we're having this discussion today to help other people with their struggles and battles.
Right. And I find a lot of the challenge when you are disabled in any capacity is that a lot of the times you're just trying to survive your day. And the system we live in, they don't make it easy to do that. A lot of people can't work or have trouble finding jobs, and they're on government support. And that's barely enough money to survive, barely. I mean, insurance companies tell you how many medical supplies you can use in a month, essentially telling you how many times you can pee or go to the bathroom. It's borderline criminal. And the system in Europe is so much different. So there's a very large spinal cord injury rehab center in Germany, for example, that I know of. And they actually invite people who are disabled with all disabilities to come and live in a facility for a year or two, learn a vocational skill, whether it's accounting or woodworking or whatever, put you back out into society, pay your taxes, and they still help you. But they want you to be engaged, in community life, which unfortunately the system's just not set up like that in the United States.
And that's the way it should be. Just because we have a challenge, and your challenge is very extreme because you're a quad, you
Right.
know, but you still do many things, work
Yeah.
daily, whether it's on the advocacy side of adaptation, but you also, I know, make a little income for yourself also.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we have to. And I just find it, when people always say to me, said, "Oh, well, I don't want to complain. You're a quadriplegic. I only have this ailment." I tell people this. I said, okay, I may suffer from my nerve pain, which is basically pins and needles in my body 24/7. But if there's an able-bodied person who's never really felt pain in their life and they get a paper cut, that pain might be just as severe as my nerve pain. So you can't compare situations. Everyone has their own life challenges, however small or big. And so, that's why I always try to promote that let's not compare disabilities across the board. Let's work together to, change the system.
That's very true, and that's one of the things that I was naive about until I have a personal friend that's paralyzed. And we had the discussion recently and stuff because we take the same meds, Lyrica,
Hmm.
but I only take it as need be. In the wintertime, these temperatures and storms,
Oh yeah.
that I sit and joke about how when you're a kid and grandma's talking about her bursitis and whatnot, and you just go, yeah, grandma, it's in your head. Well, I'm living proof now. That's BS.
Yeah.
And these storms coming through, you know, and I'll take a pill here and there. And he goes, hey, I live on Lyrica because of the nerve
I have a lot
issues.
of friends. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me, but I have a lot of friends that are on it, and the side effects it helps their pain to an extent, but I mean, the side effects are pretty severe too.
And that's the one naive-ish thing again is okay, you are paralyzed, you have no feeling, yet you have all this pain.
Right. I mean, it's the same concept as phantom limb syndrome, right?
Yeah,
And unfortunately, because you can't see nerve pain under a microscope and they can't identify it, they can't create a targeted drug to deal with, chronic pain, all chronic pain, whether you have a knee injury and it acts up with bad weather. And so a lot of people end up getting addicted to opioids. They don't want to, not really knowing that opioids don't act on the right pain receptor. They don't help your pain, but they make you feel foggy, which makes the pain appear less, right? And that's a large challenge as well.
exactly. This is throwing myself out there. I was with my pain management doctor one day, and I point blank told her that, there were thoughts at times that I would like to cut my hand off at the wrist because my pain is all from the wrist out. And she looked me in the eye and she said, don't go there because the
Yeah.
pain's still going to be there. The pain isn't in your hand,
It's
the
in your
pain is
brain.
in your head.
That's why I quit all meds a few years after my accident and I focused on meditation. But I mean, it's a long road. Every day you have to practice, and distraction is a huge one for me. I mean, I went through a dark period too, and I try to normalize, mental illness as well. Where after about 3 years of my accident, I was living in China at the time, and I just had my second spinal surgery to save my life, and the Chinese had managed to break my leg a month later as well, and I was living for months in bed and I couldn't make a thought because the pain was so intense. And I became suicidal, but I was open about it to my family. I said, this is not me. I can't live like this. You have to respect my decision that if in a year this continues, I don't want to continue. And half my family, they were on board, half of them weren't. But even talking about, and I bring this to light a lot, talking about these dark thoughts and normalizing them just as people we're trying to normalize disability, I think is an important topic.
Oh, very much so. And I try to open my heart and show the good and the bad that I
Oh
live
yeah.
with. And, you're on one extreme, I'm on the other extreme where everybody I meet or talk to responds totally different to me. Some,
Hmm.
oh, geez, you're missing half a hand. It's a big deal and stuff. And then others look at me, oh, it's just a little boo boo, no big deal, suck up and move on.
That's true. I get a lot of sympathy. I mean, because I'm a quadriplegic, I pretty much could have an excuse for if I was in a bad mood or I was angry or I wanted to bitch about something. people would understand my situation. And that it's challenging because you have somebody that doesn't have any disability on the outside, but they have a disability on the inside, any kind of mental illness, anxiety, depression, and people are so quick to judge. That is one of my biggest pet peeves is people that judge. You just never know what's going on in somebody's head when you walk down the street.
Exactly. And I say nowadays I have empathy for everybody because I have not walked in their shoes. I do not know what their childhood was or anything of that sort. So, it's human nature to judge, but I bite my tongue a lot of times saying, hey, come on, think about yourself or other
Hmm.
people. And,
I did the same thing.
yeah.
You have to.
So, so tell us about some of the items that you've been denied by insurance on.
Oh, so insurance, right. Well, I have been denied I've been fighting insurance the last 10 years or so, but I really started to become active in it. I would say 2016, but super active just this past year since COVID started. And it started when I was denied a seat elevator for my power wheelchair. And the function of a seat elevator, especially as a quadriplegic, when you don't have, you need somebody to take care of you all the time, bowel, bladder, dressing, but you can't always afford to have care 24/7. So there's hours when you're home alone, and the seat elevator allows you to get up to your bed to transfer, open your door, get to your microwave to make food, get to your kitchen counters, because, well, face it, most of us can't afford to completely make our home fully adapted. And they denied me on the basis that it was a convenience item and that it was not a covered benefit. And but they approved it 5 years prior. And so I started to really dive in deep into insurance policies. And I went to the news, I went through appeals, I submitted external reviews to the Department of Insurance after I was denied by Blue Cross. And they magically came back because I'm a pain in their butt. And they said, all right, well, we found the medical necessity of, the seat elevator, but they really just got pressure, I think, from the media. And since then, I was approved a shower chair, which is challenging to get approved, and a mattress. The big denial I've been working on, which is applicable to everybody with a disability, is adaptive exercise equipment. So I went out in September for a piece of adaptive exercise equipment called a VitaGlide. It's a rowing machine, and it's a small company, and they have created a ergonomic design. When you're rowing with your hands, it activates all the muscles in your back. So when you're pushing a manual wheelchair, you're destroying your rotator cuffs and your shoulder blades. So this piece of machinery addresses that need. And unfortunately, they don't have a medical code attached to it. And so therefore, even though it's an adaptive exercise equipment, it's exercise equipment. Therefore, it's a not covered benefit, and they won't. I lost the battle before I'd even begun, but I didn't know it until I'd lost. Where they said, no, we're not even going to consider this under a medical necessity review, in which I could have at least tried to prove my case. And so I had a really interesting lesson. I learned something, and I said, okay, how do I get insurance to review this case when I can resubmit in 120 days, which is on this coming March 1st? How do I get it under medical necessity review? Or can I maybe put it under experimental investigational services, under which I do qualify? Now, I'm still waiting for Blue Cross to hear this, to get an answer on this. But the short of it is that I'm going to reapproach. I write all my own letters of medical necessity. I have my doctors or physical therapists review them. But while you may have a great doctor, one thing from a self-advocacy perspective is never let your doctor send in anything, or your medical professional, without reviewing it first. Because I'm working with so many folks right now, and they said, I've been denied this, or I've been denied that. I said, okay, can you please get the letters that were sent on your behalf? And half of them said, well, I can't, I don't know how. And the other half that sent them to me, there were 3 lines from the doctor saying, this piece of so and so is medically necessary for my patient. Please consider approving it. I mean, I was completely shocked that these doctors don't take the time to dive into the story and why said drug or service or equipment is medically necessary. So every time I submit, and it's tricky because in any insurance plan you have, it doesn't matter Medicare, private insurance, you have the right to call care management and request a care management consultant. They have to give you this by legal right. And with the care management consultant, they usually have a nursing background, is they can help you navigate what steps and forms you need. So going back to the VitaGlide, I work for somebody in the customer escalation department. I said, I want to submit all of this, the VitaGlide by myself as a patient. And so she gave me the right forms. And then I collected all of the letters of medical necessity for my physical therapist, the one I wrote for my doctor, who he signed off on and agreed with it. And so I had negative control, which is what you want in any situation with insurance. But coming into 2021, I've decided to flip it on its head and try and prove a case. This is not just for spinal cord injury, that cardiovascular upper body exercise is medically necessary for the disabled and obviously specifically for spinal cord injury. And then trying to prove, and there are papers out there, that the effects of a sedentary lifestyle, and NASA has a lot of papers on this because they study the astronauts. And so I'm going to put a case together. I'm going to try to take hundreds of pages of research and whittle it down to 10. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that yet. And cite at least 20 to 30 of these peer-reviewed articles. And I've spent the last 6 weeks talking to exercise scientists and rehab centers and spinal cord injury nonprofits all around the country. And it's actually quite a small world in the disabled world, as you know, when you get into it. And they, everybody said, good luck. I wish you the best. Here are the papers. So I'm trying to put that together because my hopes, whether it's for a shower chair or a mattress or exercise equipment, that I can create these standard forms of letters of medical necessity that patients can basically plug and play, where they give it to their doctors and they just fill in their own personal information. And so I'm partnering with an organization called Spinalpedia. And we are writing a patient-to-patient guide for how to navigate the appeal system, the general concept. So what are some tips and tricks? What you want to make sure happens before you submit prior authorization? What happens if you get approved a piece of equipment, but it's out of network? How do you get it in network? So that's kind of that's my goal, my hopes with my advocacy that's going on right now.
Sweet. And actually, we'll talk some more offline and stuff. I have several people that, if you haven't already need to talk to on the adaptive spinal cord injury individuals that are very big into the physical fitness stuff that can prove over long term that you can still build muscles and stuff from associated muscles that you are working and stuff. And so we'll talk offline on those.
Yeah, the challenge remains in that there's not a lot of long-term research, say for spinal cord injury and the effects of physical exercise or the lack thereof, because only about, I think, 13 to 15,000 people a year break their back or their neck. So there's not a lot of funding out there, and the funding that's out there, a lot of research institutes, they're competing for. And one issue you run into that I've got to be careful of too is saying that, for example, okay, so cardiovascular exercise increases your basal metabolic rate to reduce obesity. Okay, so this can lead to not just a better quality of life, but it can lead to less pressure sores. But if you add in your own conclusions, that's when you're going to get shot down. So a lot of it is in the language. So choosing every word very wisely. So I'm going to have everybody and their mother edit this paper before I send it in.
Exactly. The insurance companies have who knows how many attorneys on their side of things that look for that one period you left out of the sentence, so to speak, to deny
But
you.
it's great. But even if I get denied the VitaGlide in 2021, at least I will have more ammunition to either hopefully pursue pro bono litigation if I can find a bleeding heart lawyer or submit an external review to the Department of Insurance. So I'm not with Medicare, it's a little different, but with any type of private insurance, once they've denied you outright after all of your appeals have been exhausted, you then have the right to submit your case to the Department of Insurance. Every state has one. And they then send out their case to an external panel of judges. It can take a little while, but that you have a better shot at getting what you need. But you have to make sure that if you're denied anything with insurance, that it's not, they don't deny you because it's not a covered benefit. That's where you run into like this stonewall, which was where I'm at the moment.
Exactly. And, I think too many of us on the adaptive side of things just rely on our doctors and everything. And, well, one of the first competitions I did, I applied for, and they came back and they go, well, sorry, you're not adaptive. You're only missing a couple of fingers. Well, like, I have a file on myself, all my surgeries, everything. And I sent across, as they called it, a book. And they start reading through and realize, oh, it's not just a little boo-boo here. He does qualify for this competition, of which, again, it's all in the documentation, and we all need to take ownership of that within ourselves, and not, if you just rely on the system's going to fail you. Is it not?
Well, and it's really interesting because you have to be careful the different definitions of disability. So with private insurance companies, they kind of they define disability as a physical impairment. But with the WHO, they have a broader definition of disability, where they say, disability is anything that impairs you from contributing to society. So it's all in how you write in the language, because if you just try to prove your case under insurance's definition of disability versus keeping standard language from a global perspective, that also helps. So every word and how you use it, and that's what I don't want people to have to do that. I want to be able to help people do that. I don't mind putting in the work and creating these form letters, but because honestly, we shouldn't have to do this work, but I can't think of one change in history that hasn't come with a lot of blood, sweat, tears, death, you name it.
Exactly. That's where we have gotten to today, because it wasn't too long ago that, especially someone in your condition, they just threw you in the corner closet and shut the door.
They still do that in China. I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah. And it's through us working together, these advocacies, that are creating the change for all.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. But that goes in. So you're an advocate, I'm an advocate, but a lot of people sitting at home that may be watching this thinking, well, I'm just trying to survive my day. How on earth am I going to do this? And part of it is, while you and I can't do the work for people, we can point people in the right direction and how to do it. But again, the fix isn't going to come like, here's everything wrapped up in a silver platter for you. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works, and it never will work. You have to put in a little work yourself, and you have to be a little bit motivated, and you shouldn't have to do as much work as we're doing, but you have to have a little bit of that self-drive to say, I want this. I'm going to work, I'm going to work with the two of you guys to figure out how to get it.
Exactly. And that's what I know about. My nickname, my foundation and such is Jeff Giving a Hand, to build the whole community. I have a website where it takes the community to help send me the information, and I'll get it on the website so that we can kind of narrow the search fields down, have
Precisely.
a little database.
Couldn't agree more.
So I want to thank you for our chat session here. A lot of great information as always with you. And keep smiling and keep up the good work.
Yeah, and I always encourage people. I mean, yes, I'm sure you do the same. I run myself very thin most of the time, and eventually, I maybe want to start a consulting company to help people with this that can afford it. But my goal is a lot of people that need help can't afford it, and so I want to create a sustainable way, a long-term way that I can do this for free to help people.
Yeah, and I will put links when I post mine to YouTube, and I will send you a copy so that we can keep spreading the word to everyone as much as possible.
Precisely. Yep, I think that's a great idea. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you today.
Yes, thank you as always, Ellie, and keep up the good work.
Sounds great. All right. Talk soon.
See ya.
Bye.